Before the advent of mass motorways in the UK, the quickest way to travel long distances with your car was by train. The services originated in 1955 with the Car Sleeper Limited between London and Perth. The Motorail brand was introduced in 1966, and this poster shows the routes operating in the late 1960s. Not all the destinations shown were served in all the years of operation, and the Motorail services finally finished in 1995. Open and closed stock was used, with many of the wagons utilising coach underframes. They could therefore travel at passenger train speeds of up to 75 miles an hour. Some trains included passenger carriages and some just the car flats. My layout pastiche, set in 1979, is based on Par in Cornwall, which saw regular motorrail trains from London Kensington to St Austell. I needed 3 car transporter wagons for this layout, and I therefore decided to purchase 3 Hornby Carflats. OK, so the Hornby Carflat is not a scale model of anything that ever ran on British Rail. Its bright colours, plastic cars and those huge ramps at each end clearly show it's made for the toy market. The handrails along the sides are also a work of fiction and not models of anything in the real world. Much more accurate models are available from other manufacturers, but like a lot of modern products, they come at a price. I wanted a train of 3 wagons, which without cars would have set me back about £100. These old Hornby designs can still be purchased for reasonable prices from internet auction sites or swap meets. The ones I bought were in mint condition, had never been used and cost me less than 1/3 of the price of more modern offerings. I also get a great deal of pleasure in repainting, rebuilding and weathering all of the rolling stock that runs on my layout. Having said all of that, no amount of modifications can turn the Hornby Carflat into a scale model, but with a little bit of time and effort, an extremely passable model can be produced. Certainly one that will not look out of place when seen on a layout at normal viewing distances. However, the Hornby cars will be consigned to the spares box. I don't like throwing anything away, but it is difficult to think of a use for these. A scrapyard perhaps? As far as the modifications are concerned, the first thing to do is to remove the huge ramps at the ends of the model. Prototype car flats had much smaller ramps stroke end pieces, and representations of these were cut from 1.5mm plasticard and welded to the ends of the car deck. The model is split down into its component parts, ready for priming. There are a number of information panels on each side of the chassis, which I didn't want to lose during the painting process, so these were covered up with masking fluid. The couplings, bogies and underframes were masked off with masking tape and the various parts spray painted with Halford's grey rattlecan primer. The real car flats had low rails along each side. I'm not sure of their purpose. Perhaps they were to stop cars sliding off the wagon sideways if their retaining chocks came loose. The Hornby model has rails with 3 horizontal bars. These are not right. We only need 1. The simplest way to fabricate these was to cut down the Hornby handrails just above the second horizontal bar. This not only gave the right height, but also meant that the new rails would still fit into the Hornby holes on the car deck. For the first wagon, I primed the handrails before reducing their height, but this turned out to be a mistake. The cutting process took off a lot of the paint and they needed priming again. For the second and third wagons, the handrails were cut to size first and then primed. A much more sensible idea. The side rails were then given 3 coats of rail blue top coat. The sides and ends of the bodies were brush painted with 3 thin coats of Precision Paints BR Rail Blue. The car decks were brush painted with 2 coats of a dirty brown colour. The couplings, bogies, underframes and wheels were brush painted with a coat of my favourite underframe brown colour. The floors of the car decks were then given a wash of a dirty colour to simulate use and dirt picked up in traffic. The cut down rails were glued to the car decks and the various parts reassembled. Motorail signs, produced on PowerPoint, were glued to 1.5mm plasticard backing panels. They were then fixed to the handrails in the middle of the wagon. The whole model was given a light weathering spray to blend in all the various parts. This also toned down the white lettering on the information panels. Before and after shots of 2 of the wagons for comparison. The conversion utilised no new parts except for some small pieces of plasticard. Each model took less than 6 hours' work, spread over about a week. Oxford die-cast cars, appropriate to the period modelled, were added, and make a great finishing touch to the model. And finally, one of the completed wagons posing on my layout pastiche. I hope this video has shown that a few simple modifications and a decent paint job can dramatically improve what is basically a toy and turn it into something which looks much more like a scale model. That's all for now. See you next time.